They cut her harness at 8,000 feet. No parachute, no warning. And yet 3 minutes later, the mountains witnessed something no one could explain. A ranger who refused to die. The roar of the Black Hawk helicopter blades tore through the night sky above the Hindu Kush range. Altitude, 8,000 feet. The wind was knife-cold, swirling around the aircraft's frame. Inside, a woman sat silently among 5 men wearing Delta Force insignia. No one spoke. No one looked at her. Then, a single snap. The safety harness was cut. 3 seconds. 3 seconds to realize this wasn't a malfunction, wasn't a drill, wasn't a mistake. 3 seconds to understand that her own allies, men trained to protect, had just sentenced her to death. Then rough hands pushed her out of the helicopter door. The wind devoured the scream that never made it out. Her body plunged into the Afghan night. No parachute, no cord, no chance. They cut her harness at 8,000 feet. No warning, no parachute. But that night the mountains learned what it means to be a ranger. Scene cut. Dawn at FOB Camp Resolute, Afghanistan. The sun rose behind the distant ridge line, bathing the barbed wire fences in gold and glinting off the memorial plaques engraved with the names of those who never came home. Inside a makeshift maintenance bay, amid the hum of engines and the scent of gun oil, Staff Sergeant Erin Matthews, 32, was cleaning her M110 rifle, the weapon that had followed her through 22 missions. She didn't fit the Hollywood image of a soldier. No bulging muscles, no superhero stance. Just a lean woman with sun-browned skin, hair cropped shorter than regulation, and eyes the color of the earth. Deep, still, always observing, never resting. In the military, they say, before every mission, death likes to knock, just to remind you he's still around. Erin had heard that knock many times, but this morning, it was louder than usual. Major Alan Prescott entered, holding a mission tablet. "Matthews," he called out, "you're sitting this one out." Erin looked up, still running the claw through her rifle barrel, her voice steady. "Sir, I wasn't aware Rangers take seats when there's a fight to be had." Prescott avoided. Corporal Jake Monroe, her closest friend, shook his head, his eyes saying what words couldn't. "This feels wrong." Erin answered with a slight nod. "No words needed. Between those who've shared battlefields, silence is enough." Night fell quickly over Kunar. The Black Hawk's engines roared to life, green cockpit lights reflecting off her face. Erin climbed aboard, carrying a weight she couldn't name in her chest. She buckled in, staring at the pitch-black sky beyond the open door. At 8,000 feet, she didn't yet know that in a few hours, this very sky would challenge every law of survival she'd ever believed in. "Not every fall begins from the sky," she whispered. "Some start the moment you're told to sit this one out." The rotor noise surged, and the screen faded to black. Night fell over the Hindu Kush like a thick, frigid curtain. Mountain winds screamed through the helicopter's seams, blending with the rotor's roar into the sound of a brewing storm. The Black Hawk trembled lightly in the thin air, climbing past 7,000 feet, then 8. 5 Delta Force operators sat inside the cabin in a row, their NVG lenses reflecting ghostly green light. No one spoke. No one met another's eyes. The air was dense, heavier than the stench of oil and gunpowder. Erin Matthews sat near the open door, one hand resting on her rifle sling, her eyes scanning the cabin. Every man in that team had been handpicked, veterans of hundreds of combat hours. But something was off tonight, a tension that didn't feel tactical, a silence that didn't sound professional, but dangerous. The pilot's voice crackled through the intercom. "Approaching phase line Alpha, 3 minutes to target." His voice rasped through the noise of the blades. Erin nodded reflexively, but at that exact moment she saw Mercer, the team leader, stand up. His movement looked casual, as if he were just stretching, but Aaron caught the details. The subtle hand signal disguised as a random gesture, and how the other 4 men shifted slightly, closing in, circling her without a word. In the world of those who live by instinct, she knew instantly. This wasn't a coincidence. This was containment. Her hand slid to her waist, fingertips brushing the pistol grip beneath her vest. Mercer turned, his voice carrying through the mic, calm as the wind, colder than ice. "You know what your problem is, Ranger?" Aaron pivoted, eyes locked on him. "Enlighten me." Mercer smiled, the kind of smile belonging to a man who's already decided everything before he speaks. "You're too damn good." Command noticed. Hell, even the locals noticed. Every warlord, every smuggler in the Kunar Valley knows the female ranger who walks these mountains like she owns them. You made yourself a legend, Matthews. And legends, they're bad for business. Her eyes narrowed. A chill crept down the back of her neck. Whose business? Mercer, price tag for your soul. Mercer chuckled dryly. Honor doesn't pay mortgages. She knew she couldn't act now. 5 men, tight space, 8,000 feet up. Draw a weapon and she'd be dead before clearing the holster. Mercer drew his knife. Its black blade glinted with green NVG light. His tone stayed polite, as if offering her a seat at dinner. Unless you want to make this difficult. Time froze. Her mind raced. She couldn't shoot, call the pilot, or jump. No option made sense. But Aaron Matthews had never believed in the word impossible. He leaned closer. A flash of motion, too quick to see. A sharp snap. The sound of a severed harness line. Instantly, 2 Delta operators grabbed her shoulders and pulled hard. The side door swung open. Outside, an abyss of night, wind slicing her face like glass. No parachute. No handhold. No way out. Mercer leaned in, eyes locking with hers, voice low. You should have stayed home, Ranger. Then he nodded once. 2 sets of hands shoved her hard. No scream, no goodbye. Only the howl of rotor blades over Afghanistan, and a lone figure dropping into the void. On the aircraft, Mercer stood by the open door watching her silhouette shrink, then vanish into darkness. He spoke into the mic, voice steady. Equipment malfunction, harness snapped. We'll report it as an accident. Below, the wind howled around Aaron Matthews as she plummeted toward the earth at 120 miles per hour. No one survives a fall from that height. No one. Except her. The air tore against her body like 1,000 blades of ice. The sky above vanished, only darkness remained, and the wind screamed like a living beast. Aaron Matthews was in Freefall. No parachute, no rescue. No one even knew she was still alive. They say that at terminal velocity, around 120 miles per hour, time ceases to exist. But for Aaron, every second stretched into eternity, not because of fear, but because she was calculating. Think, Aaron, think. She didn't panic. She didn't scream. She knew panic saves no one. Math and composure save lives. Step 1, orientation. She spread her arms, bent her knees, and arched her body into a bow. The wind hammered her, but the position stabilized. Now she could steer her body by angling her shoulders and hips as if she were piloting a parachute, only without the parachute. Step 2, location. Moonlight glinted off her NVG lenses, giving her a ghostly 3-dimensional map of the valley below. There, a glimmering silver vein twisting through the darkness. the Kunar River, cold, deep, and flowing fast beneath melting snow. It was her only chance. Hit rock, she'd shatter. Hit water, she'd have 1 in 1,000 odds. Angle, speed, entry. She whispered it like the answer to the final question on a survival exam. Tilting left, she shifted her weight until her descent curved toward the silver light. The wind changed direction, buffeting her armor. The distance was covered in the second. In her mind, a voice returned. The gruff bark of Sergeant Martinez, her old instructor at Ranger School. The body can survive incredible impacts if you understand one thing. It's not about strength, it's about intelligence. Physics doesn't care about fear, it only cares about angles. Aaron gave a faint smile. Angles, huh? All right, older man. Let's do the math. 40 seconds. She locked the M110 to her chest, tucking it tight to reduce drag. 30 seconds. Checked the wind, adjusted her pitch, turning her fall toward the river like a bullet steering itself. But it didn't kill her. It stopped the fall. She sank several meters and slammed against the riverbed. Her shoulder dislocated, and pain flared down her leg. She almost blacked out, but instinct took over. She kicked upward. Bubbles burst around her. The freezing water stabbed at her skin like needles. She fought for air, and finally, her head broke the surface. Air rushed into her lungs, burning, raw. But it was life. She looked up at the sky. Dark, empty. No helicopter. Only the river's whisper and the thunder in her chest. Then, a surge. The current slammed her into a boulder. Pain exploded through her ribs. A crack. Bone. But the impact threw her into the shallows. She clawed at the gravel, dragging herself ashore, trembling. She lay on her back on the cold, wet stones, gasping. White vapor rose from her breath. The world was still. No rotors, no radio, no rescue. Only one truth remained. She was alive. She rolled to her side, coughing up water and blood, then laughed. A short, broken laugh. Physics doesn't care about fear, she whispered. But neither do rangers. She pressed her hands to the ground, tried to stand, and fell. Left shoulder dislocated, right leg torn, 2 ribs broken. Still she crawled, inches at a time. Because a ranger doesn't stop just because gravity won. She dragged herself into a rocky crevice beneath the trees. The wind howled through, trying to steal the last warmth from her body. She opened her emergency pouch. Intact. Flashlight, knife, paracord, bandages, thermal blanket. No painkillers, no working radio. She looked at the morphine injector in her hand, then set it down. Not yet, she murmured. Pain means I'm still alive. She closed her eyes and rotated her shoulder back into place. A wet, sickening crack. Cold sweat poured down her face, but she didn't scream. She bit down on her rifle strap, breathing hard, then wrapped her chest tight with a bandage. Far off, the night sky rumbled. The faint thump of rotors returning. They were coming back, looking for her body. She smiled weakly. Dawn in Afghanistan isn't like dawn anywhere else. It doesn't begin with light. It begins with cold. The cold of mist. The cold wind. The cold truth is that every new day here is a negotiation with death. Erin Matthews opened her eyes inside a narrow crevice by the Kunar River. Her body screamed in pain. Every breath felt like a knife between her ribs. But her eyes, those eyes, were still bright, still sharp, still alive. She ran a quick self-check. Left shoulder secured with her rifle sling, stable enough. 2 broken ribs. Every breath was torture, but her lungs were intact. She could still fight. Her knee was torn open, the blood now dry beneath mud-stained fabric. She pulled her knife, slicing strips from her sleeve to make a crude bandage. She didn't speak. She acted. Because in the language of those who've learned to survive hell, actions speak louder than words. Above her, the faint thrum of rotor blades echoed through the valley. They were back, Delta Team Mercury, coming to confirm her death. But the river had carried her more than half a mile downstream. And now, to the world, Aaron Matthews was dead. She smiled faintly. Good. Let them think that. From her chest pouch, she pulled out her emergency kit. A mini light, a lighter, energy tablets, a small med pack, and a silver thermal blanket. She knew lighting a fire would give away her position, so she wrapped herself in the blanket, trapping every last bit of heat she could. Her teeth chattered, but she refused to yield. In the dark, she whispered the Ranger Creed to herself. I will never leave a fallen comrade. I will never fail my comrades. And I will never, ever quit. She looked up through the cracks in the rock. The black was fading, replaced by a thin band of amber on the horizon. And with that light, the will to live returned to her veins. Aaron began to plan, not just to survive, but to hunt. First, she unzipped a rifle case, pulling out the M110. The weapon had been submerged in water, but its moisture barrier had held. It was still functional. She wiped away the mud, checked the chamber, oiled the parts, and reattached the scope. Every motion is slow. Wolf checks the corpse of its prey. She held her breath, finger tightening slightly on the trigger. But she didn't aim for him. Not yet. She lowered the crosshairs, lined them up with the radio on Mercer's shoulder. One breath. One heartbeat. One pull. A sharp, dry crack echoed through the valley. The radio antenna burst apart, sparks and smoke spitting from the shattered metal. Everyone hit the ground. Mercer cursed, shouting into the canyon, Contact! Contact! Find her! But they saw nothing. Only wind, only stone. And then, faint, drifting through the echo of the mountains, a woman's voice. You missed one, Hawk. No one knew where it came from. No movement, no trace. But they knew she was still alive. And for the first time, fear crept into the Delta Formation. When the prey vanishes and the gunfire comes from nowhere, all training means nothing. Aaron quickly dismantled her position and moved. Rule number 1 of sniping, never shoot twice from the same spot. She moved in silence, weaving through stone and frost. Her steps were so light they left no prints. Every breath burned with pain, but she'd turned pain into rhythm. She had learned once, pain is just information, and information can be controlled. She stopped beneath a dead tree, eyes following the Black Hawk lifting back into the sky. Mercer would report a body not recovered. He'd come back. He wouldn't rest until he was sure she no longer existed. Good. She wanted him to come back. Let's finish this on the ground, she whispered, voice low and cold. You tried to kill me in the air. Now it's my turn. From that moment on, the real hunt began. No longer the betrayed ranger, no longer the woman who fell from the sky. Only Aaron Matthews, the ghost walker. The soldier declared dead in the Army's records, but alive in the silent fury of her own resurrection. Morning in the Kunar Valley carried no sound of birds, only the wind whispering through stone and the brittle branches of dead trees. Aaron Matthews, alone amid the frozen wilderness, moved like a shadow. She wasn't running. She wasn't hiding. She was leading. A few kilometers away, Delta Team Mercury began their sweep. They believed she was severely wounded, crawling somewhere to survive. They didn't realize They were walking straight into her chosen path. From high above, Aaron watched through her scope. Daylight cut through the lens, glinting off her mud-streaked, blood-stained face. Below, the dark figures moved exactly as she had predicted. Tactical spacing, perfect formation, textbook precision. Perfect for an ambush. She moved parallel to them, each step as light as breath. On her shoulder rested the M110 she had cleaned the night before. On her lips, a controlled breath. And in her mind, a plan. Clear, cold, and precise as mathematics. They thought she was just trying to survive, but she was rewriting the definition of survival. Down below, Mercer led the formation. His voice rasped over the radio. "Stay sharp. She's injured, but she's smart. Don't underestimate her." One Delta operator replied, "Sir, no one can survive that fall." Mercer answered flatly, "Then explain that shot last night." Silence. Silence. Exactly what Aaron wanted. She stopped at a narrow cliff path where the trail was pinched between two rock slabs, a natural choke point, one that forced men to move single file. The locals called this place the throat of the valley, and today it would become the throat that swallowed its hunters. Aaron pulled out a coil of paracord and tied it around a large log. No explosives, no mines. Just a mechanical trap, the kind she'd learned from Afghan villagers who once taught her how to live in the mountains. When the last man in the line, Sergeant Cooper, stepped over the trip line, the log swung down like a striking serpent. He dodged on reflex, but his boot slipped on the rocky edge. "We're still searching." The voice on the other end turned cold. "Then find her and sanitize. No witnesses." From her position on the mountainside, Aaron heard every word. Her grip tightened on the earpiece, her chest constricted. Sanitize. Not just kill her. Erase her. Her body, her data, the crime, everything. The fear inside her didn't burn. It froze. She took a deep breath, lowering the receiver. The trembling stopped. In its place came perfect clarity. "All right, Mercer," she whispered. "Let's see who gets sanitized first." Evening descended. Sunlight slashed through the peaks, casting long knife-like shadows across the valley. The Delta team started moving again, unaware that Aaron was guiding them further and further from their Blackhawk, from their supplies, from any route of escape. Every path they took, every turn they made, she'd walked them a dozen times before, back when she'd done recon missions in these same mountains. She knew every bend, every crevice, every hidden stream. They were deep inside her territory now. And in her territory, Rangers don't hide. Rangers hunt. Night fell. The team set up a small camp. They didn't know that just a few hundred meters away, beneath a blanket of dry leaves, Aaron lay still, watching through her scope, eyes unblinking. Mercer sat near the fire. The orange glow painted his face in devilish tones. Aaron whispered under her breath, "You threw me into the dark, Mercer. But you forgot. The dark is where I live." The cold wind swept down the valley, carrying the embers upward like tiny, restless souls. Above, the crescent moon hung silent, and under that moon, a ghost walked the valley. A ranger without name, without rank, armed only with will and a rifle, and a vow whispered into the night. Rangers don't run. We finish what others start. The second night in the Kunar Valley. The moon was hidden behind clouds, the sky so dark one couldn't tell where the mountains ended and the clouds began. Wind slipped through the rocks, whispering like the voices of old ghosts. Aaron Matthews moved in that thick, breathless darkness, slow, silent, nearly invisible. She had led Delta Team Mercury far enough away from their helicopter, far from their resupply zone. Now they were camping in the Deadlands, once an abandoned Taliban outpost. A place only those who had lived here could cross without leaving tracks. A place Aaron knew by heart, every boulder, every echo of the wind. She crawled closer, her body smeared with mud and ash blending into the night. Ahead, a faint red light glowed from the command tent. She could hear their voices, the crackle of the fire, and Mercer's, still calm, still confident, as if he'd never lost control. Mercer's voice rasped over the radio. Package still active, requesting immediate extraction and QRF support. No, sir, we can't confirm elimination. Copy that. Sanitize and extract. From her hiding place, Aaron heard every word. Sanitize. She repeated it silently. They weren't just trying to kill her. They meant to erase everything. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Pain flared through her shoulder, ribs, and knee, like fire spreading through her veins. But through the pain came a thought. She would carve it into stone if they wanted to erase the truth. Inside her chest of drawers, she had one thing left. A digital voice recorder is water and shockproof, and it still works. It had fallen with her, crashed with her, and survived. On it was Mercer's confession, his voice spoken in the helicopter before he pushed her out. 50,000 each, plus future considerations. Nothing personal, Matthews. You're just too effective. That line was now a bullet. Not one meant to kill, but to expose. Aaron knew she needed one more thing. Communication. Her radio was shattered, but she remembered, just a few hundred meters from here inside the old Taliban base, there had once been a small storage room, abandoned equipment. She moved silently. Mud clung to her boots. The shadows. Each breath is controlled. Each movement is so slow that even motion sensors wouldn't catch it. Closer, closer, until she could hear Mercer's breathing. 2 guards, Briggs and Matthews, no relation. One north of camp, one south. She chose Briggs, the darker side. She picked up a pebble from 5 meters away and tossed it behind him. A faint clink echoed in the dark. Briggs spun around, rifle raised, and in that instant of distraction, Aaron slipped past him, as silent as wind passing through leaves. She was inside. 5 Delta operators slept soundly, believing danger was outside. They didn't know. Death had just walked between them. On the table, Mercer's satellite phone was charging from a power bank. Aaron plugged in an earpiece and opened the contacts, internal encryption. But she didn't need to call. She just needed to send one short coded burst. To Corporal Jake Monroe at FOB Camp Resolute, the only man who knew how to decode her signal. The message was simple, but enough. Alive. Recording. Send extraction. Trust Prescott. She sent it, watching the small blinking light, a tiny spark in the dark. A fragile hope, but real. She took the recorder and placed it inside the supply crate, labeling it carefully. For command eyes only. Inside, Mercer's voice, confession, and GPS data from their conversation. Evidence no one could deny. As she turned to leave, a faint sound froze the air. A breath, harsh, uneven. Mercer's eyes snapped open. In the dim light, he saw her silhouette. Their eyes met. Neither spoke. Neither blinked. His hand went for his gun. She drew her knife. 2 movements, one faster. The blade drove through his hand, pinning it to the ground. His scream tore through the camp. 4 Delta operators bolted upright in chaos, but Aaron was gone. A shadow melted into the forest, leaving only the wind. Before vanishing completely, her voice hissed through the radio. "Next time, use both hands." Mercer clutched his bleeding hand, groaning in pain. "Find her," he wrote. The dawn. A silent declaration. "I'm still here." From above, the first Black Hawk descended. Through the scope, Aaron saw familiar faces. Major Prescott and Jake Monroe were waving beside him. The second helicopter turned in the opposite direction, toward Mercer's camp, carrying the team sent to arrest him. Aaron smiled. Checkmate, Hawk. 2 helicopters flew side by side across the Afghan sunrise, one carrying the survivor. The other is carrying the betrayers. Dawn poured over the Hindu Kush. The snow-tipped peaks, veiled in mist, turned amber as the sun rose. A narrow patch of ground between 2 ridges. That was where everything ended, or began again. On the rocky soil, Aaron Matthews stood, soaked through, caked with mud. Dried blood streaked down her neck. One shoulder hung low, her knee bound with cloth, but she stood tall. The lone soldier who survived an 8,000-foot fall and survived the betrayal of her own brothers in arms. Above, 2 Black Hawks descended slowly, the rhythm of their rotors blending with the wind, a sound both violent and sacred. The first helicopter touched down where she stood. Major Alan Prescott stepped out, followed by Corporal Jake Monroe, the man who hadn't left the radio all night. Jake saw her and froze, disbelief in his eyes. "Jesus Christ, Aaron, you're really here." She gave a faint, rasping smile. "Last I checked." Prescott approached, looking her up and down, not with the gaze of a superior officer, but of a man witnessing the impossible. "Matthews," he said quietly, "what you did, it's impossible." Aaron straightened, her legs trembling but her stance unbroken. "Not impossible, sir. Just highly improbable." Prescott chuckled softly, a rare sound in a war zone. "Physics alone says you shouldn't be standing." "Physics is just math, sir," she replied, "and I've always been good at math." The radio crackled from the second Black Hawk. The pilot's voice came through. "Sir, secondary team reports suspects detained. Repeat, Delta Team Mercury in custody. 1 wounded, 4 compliant." Prescott nodded. Aaron turned toward the ridge where Mercer and the remaining operatives stood in cuffs, heads bowed, dust coating their fatigues. One of them looked up, meeting her gaze. No hatred, no anger, only surrender. She met his eyes in silence. No words needed. The truth had already spoken for her. As she walked toward the helicopter, Jake hurried up beside her. "Wait," he said, voice cracking. "After everything you've been through, how are you even standing?" She smiled, weary but unbroken. Rangers never been sharper. Before her sat General Nathan Cole, a man who had spent 10 minutes silently reading her file without saying a word. Finally, he looked up. "Staff Sergeant Matthews, what you survived defies every rule we know. The fall should have killed you. The injuries should have crippled you. The betrayal should have broken you. Yet here you stand." Aaron replied simply, steadily and firmly. "Rangers lead the way, sir." Cole nodded slowly. "Indeed they do." He picked up another folder and set it on the table. "I'm offering you a choice. full medical retirement with honors, or reassignment to a special detachment that could use someone with your particular set of skills, and your sheer refusal to die. Aaron looked at the folder, then met his eyes. What kind of detachment? Cole smiled faintly. Fort Liberty, Building 9. Someone will meet you there. In the hallway, Jake Monroe was waiting. Retirement or mystery job? He asked. Aaron shrugged, walking forward, her back straight, her limp proud. What do you think? Jake laughed. I think you're physically incapable of choosing the easy path. She grinned, her tone a mix of humor and quiet conviction. The easy path doesn't build rangers. As they stepped outside, the sunset cast a crimson glow over the American flag. The wind caught her hair, and for a brief moment, no one saw a wounded soldier, but a symbol of unbreakable will. Aaron stopped, looking toward the horizon, where red and gold merged like blood and glory. She spoke softly, almost to herself. They threw me out of a helicopter because I was too good at my job. But I didn't fall. I just changed altitude. End of chapter. Autumn mornings at Fort Liberty, North Carolina, carry a special kind of light. Soft, clear, and so still that one can almost hear the sound of their own heartbeat. Through the pale mist, a woman strolled past the iron gate engraved with the number 9. Each step was proof of the existence of a human being who had defied the laws of nature with nothing but will. Inside, the building stood silent and solemn. No insignia, no motto. Only a small plaque that read, Silent Response Group, Human Factors Division. A unit that appeared on no map. A gathering place for those who had crossed the boundary of death and returned with a single question. Why am I still alive? Erin Matthews stopped before the plaque, morning light falling across her sun-browned face. Her right hand bore scars, her left shoulder still wrapped in bandages. Yet her eyes were alive, calm, steady, and sharp as steel forged in blood. A man's voice came from behind her. Sergeant Matthews? She turned. An older man with silver hair and piercing eyes stepped out of the shadows. Colonel Harland Voss, he said. Welcome to your next chapter. She clasped his hand firmly. Is this where soldiers come to retire? Voss smiled. No. This is where soldiers come when they've proven they don't need a parachute. Inside, the room was simple, lit by warm amber lights. A dented shell casing, a wristwatch stopped at 2347, a burned flag, and in the corner, a small metal plaque engraved with the words, 8,000 feet, no parachute, still breathing. Beside it stood her M110, polished and gleaming, the rifle that had carried her through darkness and betrayal. It was no longer a weapon, but a testament to one truth. Not every fall is the end. Voss stood beside her and spoke quietly. Your file has been sealed. On paper you died in the Kunar Valley. Aaron looked at him, smiling faintly. Then who am I now? Whoever you choose to be, he replied. This unit studies human resilience. Why some people break. Golden light of sunset painted the line of pine trees, and the breeze brushed against her metal, making it chime softly like a whispered memory. Jake Monroe walked up holding 2 cups of coffee. First time I've seen you smile since Afghanistan. She took one, sipped quietly. Maybe I'm still falling, she said softly. Jake laughed. How's that fall going? She looked toward the horizon, where the sky bled red and gold together like blood and glory. Still alive, she said. He looked at her, admiration clear in his eyes. They say you're a legend now. She smiled faintly, her voice steady as steel. There are no legends, only people who refuse to stay down. Years later, inside the U.S. Military Museum, in the gallery titled Silent Valor, Guardians in the Shadows, a polished M110 rifle rested behind glass. Beneath it, a plaque read, "Rangers don't need parachutes to survive," in memory of Staff Sergeant Aaron Matthews, who fell from 8,000 feet and rose higher than the sky itself. A group of recruits stopped in front of the display. A young woman asked quietly, "Sergeant, did she really survive?" The guide smiled, his voice low and reverent. She didn't just survive the fall. She survived betrayal, the cold, and most of all, herself. And that is what makes a legend. Among the passing visitors, a lone woman stood in silence behind them, hair now silver, eyes still the same. Aaron Matthews touched the glass softly. Her reflection merges with the image of her younger self. Her voice, low and tender, carried only for her to hear. They thought the fall would end me, but all it did was teach me how to fly. Falling doesn't mean failure. Sometimes it's how life teaches us to see our true strength. Aaron Matthews fell from 8,000 feet, no parachute, no hope, and proved that survival is only the beginning. If this story reminds you that the human spirit is stronger than any limit, please share it. Leave a comment about a time you stood back up after a fall. And if you want to